I'm the Mythology Guy, and I just saw Kaos on Netflix. And I gotta say, what a welcome surprise. I had never heard of this show until you guys told me about it. I didn't see the trailers, I didn't know the premise, I hadn't even heard anything, and then suddenly I see all these YouTube comments, oh, there's this show, Kaos on Netflix, check it out, please check it out, make an inaccuracy video, make something. So I thought, alright, let's see what this is, and I pull it up on Netflix, and there's Jeff Goldblum playing Zeus, and I was like, okay, this I gotta see. And I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't want to stop watching it. I actually was up until 5 a.m. last night finishing this show. So that's pretty much a good sign. Yeah, I'd say overall, a very interesting new take on Greek mythology that I don't think we've seen before, at least not in screen media form. I'm sure maybe someone's written a book or something. But this was definitely new. It was refreshing. I had a really good time with it. Now, so here's the overall premise. I'm not going to spoil things. I'll go into spoilers later and I'll give you a warning beforehand. But the overall premise is Greek mythology in modern day. It's what if the Greek gods were still around? Like Zeus is still around, Hera's still around, Dionysus is still around. But they also move some other things. For example, it's not just like, oh, what if the Greek gods were still around and all these stories happened in ancient times? Some of the stories are happening in modern day for some reason. Like Orpheus and Eurydice is happening in modern day for some reason. Ariadne and King Minos are happening in modern day for some reason. You know, it's just all these what's the word? All these stories that were supposed to take place in ancient times are instead happening now. And yeah, it's at first I thought it was weird. I thought, oh, did Orpheus and Eurydice come back from the dead, or they're just immortal for some reason? No, their story, again, they've moved all these stories up to the modern day, you know, and they just didn't happen in ancient times. Instead, they've happened now. And if you're willing to be on board with that, then you've got a show. And, you know, one thing I really love about this show is how in character the gods are. Zeus is pretty much how you would expect Zeus to be, if you've read Greek myth. He's a pervert, he's an asshole, he's selfish, he's narcissistic, but he's not just constant evil. You see that there's a side of him that, you know, genuinely wants to spend time with his kids, genuinely wants to be with his wife. He also has his jealous side. I mean, you'd probably think, oh, Jeff Goldblum playing Zeus, this is just going to be constant silliness and funny moments. And there's definitely the silliness and the funny moments, but there's also the dark moments. You know, this is marketed as a dark comedy, and I'd say there's a lot more dark than comedy on this show. At first, when I've watched the first episode, I thought, okay, this is like The Boys, but with mythology instead of superheroes. But I'd say The Boys has a lot more comedic moments than this show does. This show definitely leans more into the drama, more into the, you know, what the characters are going through. Not that The Boys doesn't do that, it's just this does it more often. It focuses less on comedy than The Boys does. The Boys has those dramatic moments, but every episode tries to have something funny or insane. Like this show, I feel like has, like, again, it's got the funny moments, but it's got a lot more drama. Like, they really, really want you to care about these characters and what's going on. I could have used a little more comedy because it is the Greek gods. First episode has plenty of comedy, by the way. And again, there's little comedic bits here and there. I just would have liked to see a little more of it. Maybe just because I was having so much fun watching the Greek gods on screen. Again, Jeff Goldblum does a very great Zeus. The woman playing Hera is perfect. She's a perfect Hera. And again, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but Hera is very in character on this show. If you've read Greek myths and you know the kind of stuff Hera does, we see some of that here. Dionysus is on the show, and the guy playing him does a good job, and there's fun little in-jokes, like with the shirts he wears and some of the stuff he says and everything. The only thing is, like, you know, I like beer belly Dionysus. I always picture Dionysus with a belly. This guy's in great shape, but again, he's a good Dionysus. It's not like he's doing a bad job or anything. I always associate, you know, like how you associate Zeus with having a beard, I associate Dionysus with having a beer belly. Also, Poseidon is a ton of fun on this show as well. I got so excited every time they introduced a new god because I was like, well, you've done all the gods great so far, so I'm really happy to see more of them show up in this. Hades also, I thought, was portrayed well, too. You know, it's just, I really thought they did a good job with them all, and Hades and Persephone's relationship feels like how you would expect it to be, if you know, which I'm sure they felt a big need to get right, because there's a ton of love these days for Hades and Persephone's relationship. Let me see what I got on my notes here. So, kind of like Immortals Phoenix Rising, this is a story that is narrated by Prometheus. And the guy playing Prometheus, again, great, got a good voice, good narrator voice. And there's funny moments where Zeus will just talk to Prometheus for advice, even though, like, he'll literally pull Prometheus from being eaten alive by the eagle, and then he'll start complaining to him, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, things are so hard for me, and it's so funny to watch Zeus complaining to his life to a guy who's literally getting eaten alive every day. There are things they don't do. They don't have the gods bleed golden ichor, which if I ever do an inaccuracy, we're going to hear about that. Also, Prometheus should technically be free by now, because they've made it clear this is after the 12 labors of Heracles, and Heracles is supposed to free Prometheus during his labors, but we're not doing that, I guess. Yeah, and we also get to see the underworld in this show, and they've changed up how the underworld works. For those who know Greek mythology, there's actually several different afterlives you can end up in the underworld. It takes a lot to potentially get reincarnated in the underworld, but this show completely changes it up. They've got a new system where basically everyone is going through this frame of reincarnation, and unless you don't have a coin, in which case you just work a job in the underworld. Which is not how it is in real myths. In real myths, I know it's funny to say real myths, but you know what I'm saying. In the actual source material, if you didn't have a coin when you went into the underworld, you wouldn't even cross the river Styx until Charon was feeling generous. In this, they just immediately end up on like a ferry cruise line, which again, I love. I love how they're making Greek mythology, but modern day. And they immediately cross the Styx. And there's all these funny little things, like Hades made a little video for new people coming into the underworld on like the safety precautions and what they need to do. It's so funny. It's cute. Also, the way they show the gods watching what the mortals are doing on Earth is it's like a channel on their TV, which is like straight out of The Simpsons in the Heaven episode. Earth is channel 22, I think. Yeah, it's just great. I really like, and again, Hades is a character who takes his job seriously. There's a whole bunch of little Cerberus dogs instead of one. They're cute. Something, again, that I'll probably bring up if I ever do an inaccuracy video. One thing I also really like in this show is how they hint at stuff. There's little subtleties out in this world for mythology fans. There's little ways that this world works, little references. For example, I have some of them written down here. Like, they go to the store and there's all these mythology-themed cereals. There's, and walking around the town, there's like poster ads for an oracle to help you figure out what your prophecy means. You know, it's like, call this number to talk to this oracle. And also, there's on the news, there's live coverage of human sacrifices that are happening. There's also this tradition, apparently in this world, every single person, once they're born, they're given a prophecy for something that will happen in their life, which makes sense in a Greek mythology-themed world. That sounds like something that would happen, because there's so many mythology stories where people go to oracles to get prophecies. So yeah, it makes sense that it would just become a tradition. Okay, you're born, probably literally in the hospital, there's probably an oracle standing there telling you okay, here's the baby's prophecy, here's what's gonna happen. Like, it's really cute. And there's like other little references, like in Mount Olympus at one point, you can see just a peacock walking in the background. That's just there for myth fans to see there in the background. Like, it's not even an easy catch, but I appreciate that that's there. There's a club with a one-eyed guy named Polly. You can probably tell what's being referenced there. There's a girl running around talking about how no one ever believes her. She always tries to warn people about stuff, but no one believes her, and then bad things happen. If you're a mythology fan like me, you can tell who that girl is and where they're going with that. Though they do eventually say what her name is, but I figured it out, and I'm proud of that. I'm always proud of that stuff. Oh yeah, Heracles, for God's sake. You got Zeus calling his son Hercules, which makes absolutely zero sense since no one else is referred to by their Roman name. And also, this is a world where Rome can't possibly exist. Because in, the Greek legends, and maybe real history, I don't know for sure, Rome was founded by the last survivors of Troy. But in this world, the Trojan War was only like 30 years ago, and the Trojans are now like an oppressed group that live in Greece. So they haven't started Rome. So there would be no Rome, there would be no Roman pantheon, there would be no Roman names. Why the fuck are you calling Heracles Hercules? God damn it. It just keeps happening over and over and over again. Oh, God. There's a scene where Eurydice is wearing a snake ring, which I think is supposed to be a reference to how she was killed by a snake. Not sure why you'd want to be reminded of that, but then again, they've changed the story, so I guess, not what happened here. There's also, I really like how they do this really well. A lazier show would have, like, you just go to a temple and it's just a temple of the gods and you'd pray. But no, this show does what's more Greek accurate, where you go to a temple and it's to one particular god. Like, there's a scene where a character, it looks like she's going to church, but she's literally just going to this big temple of Hera, and there's a statue of Hera, and it says Hera on the temple, so you know which god's temple you're in. And I loved that. I loved that little attention to detail. It was really cool. It makes the world feel more, developed, and it's really awesome to see that. There's also some clever writing involving certain twists or where certain things are going. And I think I'll just get to that in spoilers. But yeah, overall, I would say good show. I had a really good time with it. I'm glad it exists. I hope there will be a season 2. I hear this show is a huge hit. So I'm down to see a season 2. Oh, I guess another thing I should mention, in case this matters to certain people, they make some characters gay who are not gay in the myths, but, they're changing up so much stuff that I don't really care that much. There's certain characters that I didn't think would be, dark-skinned who are dark-skinned here, but I'm not an expert on, like how many dark-skinned people were in ancient Greece. Again, didn't really bother me here, but if you're Greek and you know more about this stuff than me, you're welcome to tell me, like, if they got anything wrong or any stuff like that. But yeah, again, I didn't really mind them adding, like, more gayness into the show because Greek is a very gay-heavy culture and mythology, so that's totally fine. But yeah, like, for example, they make Prometheus gay. He's not gay in the myths, but sure, whatever. I can't say the other one without spoiling a reveal, so I won't, but there's another character they make gay who isn't gay in the myths, but I didn't really care about that either. They also do, they do interesting modern twists on, like, what happens with Ariadne and Theseus. They do interesting modern twists on what happens with Orpheus and Eurydice. And yeah, I'll get to that stuff in spoilers. But overall, I'd say if you're a mythology fan, the show's very R-rated, by the way. Very R-rated. So if you're a mythology fan and you're an adult or a teenager who just likes to watch R-rated stuff and is, I guess, allowed to, I'd say give the show a watch. Watch the first episode, see how you feel about it. I had a good time with it. I'm glad it exists. I'm glad we're getting fun new takes on Greek mythology like this. I didn't have any problems with it. It didn't feel like it was, like, trying to insert someone's, like, overly obvious, like, political views into a place where it didn't belong. No, there's actually commentary in here that I think is done properly. Like, it's woven into the story in a way that makes sense and in a way that feels right for the most part. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that, and I'm going to get into spoilers now. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. All right, the Minotaur is Ariadne's brother and human. I like to just yell a random spoiler when I get into the spoiler section. So yeah, like I said, they have some modern twists on some of the characters. For example, in the original, Theseus Ariadne story, Ariadne was in love with Theseus, but Theseus didn't love her back. And the reason in the original story was because she was plain. She wasn't that good looking. And he was like, no, when I get married, it's going to be to someone way better looking than this girl. It's kind of fucked up. And so he, dumps her on an island and she ends up marrying Dionysus. In this, Ariadne is into Theseus, but it turns out Theseus is gay. So that's their, modern twist on that. And yeah, there's some clever writing and clever little twists here. For example, when they say in one of the early episodes, Ariadne had a brother at one point who died, and I'm like sitting watching this show thinking, Ariadne never had a brother. Well, unless you count the Minotaur. I swear to God, that's what I was saying to myself. I was like, unless you count the Minotaur, that's technically her brother. And then several episodes later, your brother is the Minotaur. And I was like, oh, okay. I called it, I guess, sort of, not really. But, so again, that's a clever thing that actually does tie into the original myth. It's obviously not what happens in the original myth, but it's a way to use your new modern interpretation and still take elements from the original as a way to kind of do something new while still showing that you know what happened in the old version, still paying respect to it in that way. That's the kind of creative liberty I can actually get really into. One part that makes no sense, though, is when the gods are watching, Ariadne on TV, Ariadne stabs her father, and then Dionysus just out of fuck shit nowhere goes, oh my god, I think I'm in love. What? Based on what? You like girls who stab their dads? Where did that come from? I know you two are together in the mythology, but this makes no sense. Like, you didn't build that up at all. He's never met the girl. I honestly thought they were going to have him fall in love with Orpheus. And yeah, they do a new modern take on Orpheus and Ariadne, again with some clever writing. Not Ariadne, I'm sorry. Orpheus and Eurydice, where the Orpheus story has him going to the underworld, but ultimately not getting his wife back. In this, he goes to the underworld and ultimately doesn't get his wife back, but in a completely different way, because he actually gets her out of the underworld, but finds out she's fallen out of love with him, and she doesn't want to be with him anymore. And so while they're on the way out, he's so sad about it that he can't bring himself to look at her, which is, in this myth, he wasn't allowed to look at her on the way out. And then once he looked at her in the myth, he lost her forever. In this, he can't bring himself to look at her. And then when he does finally turn to look at her, she gives him one last hug. And then I'm guessing they never see each other again because they part after that. So that's their clever little twist on this. Honestly, at first I was a little annoyed at Eurydice because this man went through the fucking underworld to find you and, not so much as thank you. I know he did something kind of bad, but at the same time, it's a little mixed. He took her coin so that she couldn't pass through the gate to renewal because he wanted to find her in the underworld. That's why he did it. He wanted to continue being with her. And yes, selfish decision, bad decision. Though she does find out later that everyone who goes through that gate doesn't renew. Their souls are sapped and they're just left there for all eternity. So it's kind of good that he did that, but it's not like he knew that. However, I was kind of thinking, look, people make mistakes. You could at least acknowledge that he went through all this to get you back. And then actually she does. In the final episode, I think it was, she does say, hey, thank you for giving me my life back. I was like, okay, that's good. Thank you for that. I do agree, though, that Orpheus made some mistakes. I wish they had delved into that a bit more, because honestly, in the first episode, with the way they talked to each other, it felt like a real couple. I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, no couple would act like this. No, it actually felt real. You can see Orpheus is kind of love-bombing on her because he really, is really trying to make the relationship special. He's like doing what he thinks will make her happy, even though it's not what will make her happy. That is actually pretty relatable. I've actually kind of been in that scenario. When you're in that scenario, you need to ask your partner, what can I do? What do we need? Because the way he says it to her like, well, I can't love you in silence. And that's not so bad, is it? Isn't it a good thing? And it's like, I get why he would say that. When you're in that scenario, you need to not, like, say that to your partner because that immediately invalidates how they're feeling. And I know that's not what he's trying to do, but he's doing it unknowingly. And what you need to do is go to your partner and say, like, does this make you uncomfortable? Like, when it looks like they're uncomfortable. And if they say yes, you should say, what you should say in that scenario is, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to do. What should I do? What can we do differently? Like, what do you want? What can we do to make this work? And yeah, Eurydice should be telling him these things, but she just doesn't have, like, the courage to do it. And that's also a relatable thing in a relationship. So I liked how the relationship was written. It felt so real, And there's this one organic twist I really love where at one point in the show, Orpheus gets stabbed in the hand twice by one of the Fates, and then it turns out the mark that was left on his hand is the same mark Prometheus told Charon he had to look for in the future. And then when Charon sees the mark, he goes, where did you get that mark? And Orpheus goes, from fate. And it's like, that's true. You literally got it from a fate. And I'm like, oh, that's some really clever writing right there, because it's all fated. It all comes together. I loved how that was written. So yeah, that was really good. Honestly, really liked a lot of the stuff here. Oh, I just realized I didn't say anything about Kaos. Kaos, I think that's how you say the name. I was surprised to see that character. That's actually a very obscure character. But then I kind of realized I think Kaos is only here because they wanted to have a trans character in the show. It's not a bad choice to have, honestly. I'm guessing they didn't want to use hermaphroditus because that is a fucking horror story. But Kaos, for anyone who doesn't know, was a woman who hooked up with Poseidon. I don't think it was forced. I don't remember the exact details. But she hooked up with Poseidon, and then she was going to get pregnant, and she told Poseidon, I can't have children. There's some vow I made, I think it was, that I can never have children. And Poseidon said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to turn you into a man. So Poseidon turned her into a man. He also made him Kaos. He made Kaos invulnerable after that. Turned Kaos into an invulnerable man after that. So that's how Kaos went from woman to man. In this show, it just happens because, it's a standard trans person. And then, the Amazons apparently chase Kaos down and kill him because they're like, you are a blasphemer, you defile the gods with your actions. It's like, this is funny because in the original story it was one of the gods who literally did this to Kaos. It was literally the will of the gods. So definitely different. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Like I said, Hera's very in character. There's a really fucked up scene with Hera in this show. They change other things, like instead of Dionysus's mother being incinerated, she gets turned into a bee. Oh wait, but then she gets incinerated later. I wonder if that was intentional. Technically, yeah. But what did you think of the show? Is there something I missed? Do you want to see a season 2? Is there something that pissed you off? If you're Greek, I'd really love to hear what you thought of the reinterpretations of Greek myths. And some of you might be thinking, how can you say nice things about it? It's clearly inaccurate. Guys, beginning of every video I say, inaccurate does not mean bad. Those inaccuracy videos are for fun and education. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty good, and I don't know how to end videos.